Have you ever heard of a general so brilliant, so audacious, that he almost brought the mighty Roman Republic to its knees? A man who led an army, complete with war elephants, across the treacherous, snow-covered Alps. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Hannibal Barca, one of history's greatest military masterminds. His story begins not in glory, but with a solemn promise. Picture this, a 9-year-old boy, standing before a sacred altar in Carthage, the great rival of Rome. His father, Hannibal Barca, a renowned general himself, makes him swear an oath of eternal enmity towards Rome. This single moment would shape the destiny of a man and the course of an entire civilization. Fast forward a few years, Hannibal, now a charismatic and battle-hardened young commander, inherits his father's army in Spain. But he wasn't content with just holding territory. He had a much grander, much crazier plan. Rome was the superpower of the Mediterranean, protected by its formidable navy and the seemingly impassable Alps to the north. No one would be foolish enough to attack Rome from that direction, right? Well, Hannibal was exactly that kind of foolish, or rather, that kind of genius. In 218 BC, Hannibal set out from Spain with an army of around 50,000 infantry, 9,000 cavalry, and, most famously, 37 war elephants. His plan was to do the unthinkable, march his entire force over the Alps and into Italy. It was a gamble of epic proportions. The journey was brutal. They faced hostile local tribes, treacherous mountain passes, and the bone-chilling cold. Men and animals alike were lost to rock slides, ambushes, and sheer exhaustion. Imagine trying to guide a terrified, multi-ton elephant along a narrow, icy ledge thousands of feet up a mountain. It's the stuff of legends because it sounds completely impossible. By the time Hannibal descended into the plains of Italy, his army was a shadow of its former self. He had lost nearly half his men and most of his elephants. A lesser general would have turned back, but Hannibal wasn't a lesser general. He was a master of psychology and strategy. He knew he had to win a decisive victory, and fast, to convince the local Italian tribes, who were subjects of Rome, to join his cause. His first major test came at the Battle of the Trebia. The Romans, overconfident and led by the rash consul Tiberius Sempronius Longus, were lured into a trap. Hannibal had his men eat a hearty breakfast, while the Romans were forced to cross a freezing river on an empty stomach. Hidden Carthaginian cavalry then smashed into the Roman rear. It was a complete disaster for Rome. Hannibal had announced his arrival in Italy with a thunderous victory, but he was just getting started. The following year, at the Battle of Lake Trasimene, Hannibal orchestrated one of the largest and most successful ambushes in military history. He hid his entire army in the forested hills overlooking the lake, waiting for the Roman legions to march into a narrow pass along the shoreline. As a thick morning mist rolled in, obscuring the Romans' vision, Hannibal sprung his trap. The Carthaginian forces descended from all sides, trapping the Roman army against the lake. The result was a slaughter. Thousands of Romans were killed or drowned trying to escape. Rome was in a state of panic. Who was this man who seemed to appear from nowhere and destroy their invincible legions? The Romans, desperate, appointed a dictator named Quintus Fabius Maximus. Fabius understood that he couldn't beat Hannibal in a straight fight. So, he adopted a new strategy, which we now call Fabian tactics. He refused to engage Hannibal's army directly. Instead, he shadowed them, launching small guerrilla attacks and cutting off their supply lines, hoping to wear them down over time. It was a smart, cautious approach, but it was unpopular with the Roman public and Senate, who saw it as cowardly. They craved a glorious, decisive victory to restore their honor. This impatience led to the single most catastrophic day in Roman military history, the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC. The Romans assembled the largest army they had ever fielded, nearly 86,000 men, determined to crush Hannibal once and for all. Hannibal, with a much smaller army of about 50,000, faced them on an open plain. It looked like a suicidal move, but Hannibal had a plan. A brilliant, terrifying plan. He arranged his infantry in a crescent shape, with the weakest troops in the center bulging forward. As the massive Roman legions pushed forward, the center of Hannibal's line slowly gave way, just as he intended. The Romans, sensing victory, pressed deeper and deeper into the bulge. But it was a trap. The crescent shape inverted, and Hannibal's strongest infantry, positioned on the wings, swung inwards, enveloping the Roman flanks. At the same time, his superior cavalry, having defeated their Roman counterparts, circled around and attacked the Roman rear. The Roman army, the most powerful in the world, was completely surrounded. They were packed so tightly they could barely lift their weapons to fight. What followed was not a battle, but an extermination. By the end of the day, as many as 70,000 Roman soldiers lay dead on the field. It was an absolute masterpiece of military tactics, a double envelopment that is still studied in military academies to this day. After Cannae, it seemed like the city of Rome itself was defenseless. Hannibal's generals urged him to march on the city. "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal," one of them famously said, "but you do not know how to use it. So why didn't he march on Rome?" Historians have debated this for centuries. Perhaps his army was too exhausted. Perhaps he lacked the proper siege equipment to break down the city's formidable walls. Or perhaps his ultimate goal was never to destroy Rome, but to break its federation and restore Carthage as the dominant power in the Mediterranean. Whatever the reason, this decision proved to be a critical turning point. Although he had won spectacular battles, Hannibal's grand strategy was failing. Not enough of Rome's allies defected to his side. They were cowed, but their loyalty to Rome held firm. For over a decade, Hannibal rampaged across Italy, a constant, terrifying threat, but he could never land the final knockout blow. Rome, with its vast manpower and unyielding resolve, slowly rebuilt its strength. The Romans found their own brilliant general in a young man named Publius Cornelius Scipio. Instead of trying to fight Hannibal in Italy, Scipio did something bold. He took the war back to Hannibal's home turf, invading North Africa itself. This forced Carthage to recall Hannibal from Italy to defend his homeland. After 15 years of fighting on foreign soil, the great general was finally going home. The final showdown came in 200 BC at the Battle of Zama. It was the clash of the titans, Hannibal versus Scipio. This time, however, the tables were turned. Scipio had studied Hannibal's tactics and adapted them. He figured out a way to counter Hannibal's war elephants, and his cavalry was superior. In a long, brutal battle, Hannibal was finally defeated. It was his first and only major loss, but it was the one that mattered most. The Second Punic War was over. Rome was the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. Hannibal survived and even became a statesman in Carthage for a time, but the Romans never forgave him. They hounded him for the rest of his life, forcing him into exile. Eventually, cornered by Roman agents in Bithynia, in modern-day Turkey, the old general, rather than face the humiliation of capture, took his own life. His final words were said to be, "Let us relieve the Romans from the anxiety they have so long experienced, since they think it tries their patience too much to wait for an old man's death." Hannibal Barca's story is a timeless epic of genius, audacity, and ultimate tragedy. He never accomplished his sworn goal of bringing down Rome, but he came closer than anyone ever had or ever would. His journey across the Alps remains one of the most daring feats in military history, and his tactical brilliance at battles like Cannae's had a standard that generals would aspire to for millennia. He was a nightmare that haunted the Roman psyche for generations, a legendary figure who proved that with enough courage and ingenuity, even the impossible can be attempted. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the life of one of history's greatest generals, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more epic stories. Let me know in the comments which historical figure you'd like to see covered next. See you in the next video.